Ever struggle with creating a cumulative sales chart in Quickbase? Well, struggle no more, my friend. Welcome to Quickbase Junkie. I help Quickbase builders learn fast to deliver more. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make these 3 different cumulative sales charts. We'll start with this one here on the right called all-time cumulative sales. For this demonstration, I'm using a data set from Kaggle where you can get open access public data sets for examples just like this. If you want to follow along, you can get the link to this same data set in the resources below. It includes orders for various types of vehicles, where each record represents an order line number and a volume of sales that we'll be using for that report. In order to display those charts, there's a couple of fields that are of important note. So let's jump into the settings and we'll look at the fields. The first is the order date. In order to control what shows on that x-axis, we need to have a date field. So for us, it's order date, field ID 10. We also need the y-axis, right? This is our dollars. This is going to be our sales data, which is field ID 27. And then last, if there's any filters we want to apply, I need to make note of those as well. In this case, it will be the status field, which includes items like shipped, and that is field ID number 11. With that information, I can head back out and we can start our report. Creating a new report, this will be a chart. And the very first chart is our all-time cumulative sales. This will be a bar chart. You could also choose a line chart. And that x-axis will be based on our order date. And we want to group that by month. The y-axis. Usually you're choosing the sales directly for the y-axis, but there's a problem with that. Let's take a quick look. And when we just choose sales, we get the sales bucketed into each month. We don't get that cumulative effect that we're looking for where everything adds up to the right. So how do we get there? In order to do that, what we want to use are some report formulas. You could do this in a regular formula field, but because it's really intended just to serve purpose in this report, we're going to do it directly on the report and save some clutter in our fields. So scrolling down to our report formulas, we'll add a new report formula. This is our cumulative sales, and it will be a currency field. And I don't want to show any decimals, so I'll just make that a 0. Check the box, and now I can write my formula. The formula I'll use here is a query formula. If you are not familiar with queries or query formulas, you'll want to first watch Query Writing 101 and the oh so fantastic formula queries, because in there I'll go through detail of how these queries work. I'm going to write it pretty fast here, so if you don't know what I'm doing, watch those other videos first. I'll start by defining a variable in order to house my query. It is a text variable, and I'll just call it query. Our query will start with that field ID 10, which was our order date, and we want to set the very beginning of the period. So anything on or after the very beginning of the year, 01, 01, and in this data set, we're going to go back to 2020. That's the very beginning of the data set. If you wanted to look back 2 years, 3 years, something like that, but this is where you have a hard cutoff, maybe 5 years, you put that very beginning date here. Along with that, we want to add up using our query formula through each record's last day of the month. So again, field ID 10, only this time on or before, and this time we need a more dynamic date that is the end of the month for the record's month, so the order date on the record. And then append that to the end of the query, which has that curly bracket, and one more piece. Any filters we need to include them here in the query as well. This will be that status field, which was field ID 11, and we'll make sure that's equal to shipped. And again, close out that query and semicolon to close out my variable. Now I can call that query in my query functions. Calling the query in the get records function to pull in all of those records that match the query. Since we're in the same table as the transactions, I don't need to include a table ID or table alias. But once I get those records, I want to sum their values. And from which field do I want to sum the values? Well, that was the sales field. That was field ID 27 that had that sales dollar total. This is the end of our report formula. That's all we need for this formula. But I'm going to scroll down and also include my filter. So that was the status of shipped. I want my filters here to always match the filters I have in my query because the two don't technically talk to each other. So we want to make sure that they always match because one will not impact the other. And I can show you what that looks like on the report. Scrolling back up now, I need to set my Y value to my cumulative sales. And very important piece here, we're going to change this from summed to average because that sum for the month is going to end up on every single record that comes back in that month. And if we sum them, you're going to end up with some really, really big numbers. Might impress the leadership, but it will be wrong. So we're going to go ahead and make this an average. And last, I will change the color so it looks nice on my dashboard and click Save. Beautiful. Now I've got that chart of cumulative sales growing from left to right as each month progresses. So we see here at the very end, we've got just over $7 million in cumulative sales over this time period. And if I start to filter to just classic cars, still 7 million, just ships, well, slightly different there, but it's not going to be right. Still 7 million with trains. Something is off. Again, it's because of those filters. The query is still pulling in trains and ships and motorcycles and all of the things because we don't have that filter in our query. I'll reset this and head back in and actually remove the option to use these dynamic filters because it will be misleading. So I will simply set that to none and save once again. There is one other option I'll show you on this report. In order to remove that use of average, if for some reason someone has a problem with it saying average, there is a workaround where we can sum instead of average. I'll add that report formula in here. This formula is not pretty, but it gets the job done. Essentially what I'm doing here in Formula 2 is identifying which record has the highest record ID in a single month, and then using my if statement at the bottom, I'm only putting in the total up through that month in that one record that has the highest record ID number that month. This way, only one record has the sum total in it, and we can switch this to our cumulative sales 2 and make it sum, changes my color and save. Same result, same total, only now if we were to drill down off here on the right, we get that cumulative sales. Notice only one of these has the value in this sales 2 column, whereas this one had it in the others. I don't think it's necessary, but if someone doesn't like to see the average on that report, that's your workaround. Head back to our report and customize so we can move on to report type number 2. I'll do a save as, and our second report type is going to be our year-to-date sales by month. In this case, we're going to be using a line and bar chart. On the x-axis, we're going to keep it as month. On the y-axis, we can keep it as cumulative sales. Change this back to our original because I think it's easier to work with. And I'll delete this one. Now we just need to make a slight modification to these cumulative sales because now we're no longer looking at a long-term horizon. We're specifically wanting to look back at the year to date. And now that year to date can change from year to year. So instead of hard coding the number in here, we're going to add another reference. Only this time we want to reference the first day of the year based on the order date for any given record, and make sure that's all appended correctly. Quickbase makes that really easy with that first day of year, last day of month. And so now every record will sum up starting at the first of its given year through the last day of its month. Scrolling down, again, we want things to match. So let's set our order date is during the current year. So next year, it'll automatically update and still be accurate as year to date. So we've got our cumulative sales on the primary y-axis, let's see, which is our line. Our line is the cumulative sales, and then our bar, we want to just show those sales by month. So we get the bar by month, but then we also get the line showing the total. Now, the one thing I don't like about this particular report is the way in which the primary and secondary axes show up. So my line, the axis for the line is on the left-hand side. And so that total here of roughly 2 million for the year so far is actually here on the left, whereas the monthly totals are here on the right. But it makes for a very nice effect when looking at both the individual month sales plus the cumulative overall sales. All right, that was report type number 2, which leaves us with just one more report type. I'm in customize, do a save as. This will be our year-over-year cumulative sales. Now for year-over-year, we want to see months along the bottom, only we want our years stacked on top of each other. So that chart type will just be a line chart. And now for our order date, we actually need a different value. So I'll scroll down and we will add another report formula. There's a couple of different ways you can do this, and I show how to create a super easy year-over-year chart in one of my simple solutions on the Quickbase Junkie blog. So if you want more details on how to create that basic one, you can head over and read all of the details there. But we want a cumulative year-over-year chart. So for my month, I'm going to use what I call the fancy formula, which essentially takes the month number as a 2-digit number and appends it to a 3-character name of month. If you want to learn more and really master using formulas, you can see how valuable they are here. I have a course called Mastering the Text Formula that I know you're gonna love. Check that box and head up and change this to our month formula. Again, those formulas show up at the bottom of the list. Equal values is good. We want our cumulative sales, still averaged. Nothing on the y-axis, but for our series, we need to set our order date to the year. This way we get 3 separate years showing up along those same months. Last thing to adjust is our order date. We want all orders for all 3 years that are in this data set. So I will remove that, and now we should see all 3 dates. With my colors set, I'll hit save. And there we have it. January through December with 2020, 2021, and 2022 all stacked on top as cumulative sales. So those were all 3 reports. We started with that cumulative all-time sales. Then we jumped over to the year-to-date sales by month, and then the year-over-year cumulative sales. I haven't included it here, but there are other variations that you can create. So if you wanted to create cumulative reports by week or by day within a month, or even use durations or counts instead of dollar values, that is all possible, but would require some adjustments. If you liked this video, there's a whole lot more going on over at quickbasejunkie.com/training. And when you're ready, I'll see you in the first lesson. If you found this video helpful, let me know. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.